Imagine being told you can't achieve your biggest dream simply because you're a woman. That's exactly what happened to Sushila Karki, but what she did next changed an entire nation forever. Nobody knew that this one woman would break a centuries-old barrier and face challenges that would test every fiber of her being. By the end of this story, you'll understand why her journey became a symbol of hope for millions. Picture this: Nepal, 2016, a country where women had been fighting for equal rights for decades, but the highest position in the justice system had never been held by a woman. Never. The legal establishment was dominated by men who believed some positions were simply not meant for women. But Sushila Karki was about to prove them all wrong. Born into a society that questioned women's capabilities at every turn, Sushila faced her first challenge before she even started her career. Her own family questioned whether law was the right path for a woman. Friends whispered behind her back, saying she was being too ambitious. But something burned inside her, a fire for justice that no amount of discouragement could extinguish. Her childhood had been shaped by witnessing injustices that no child should see. She watched as women in her neighborhood were denied property rights, as domestic violence cases were dismissed by local authorities, as educated women were forced into silence. These experiences planted a seed of rebellion in her young heart. As a young law student, she excelled where others struggled. Her professors noticed her sharp intellect, her ability to see through complex legal arguments, and her unwavering dedication to fairness. But even excellence wasn't enough to silence the critics. Every achievement was met with comments like, "Impressive for a woman," or "She's good, but can she handle real pressure?" The early years of her career were a constant uphill battle. Male colleagues would question her decisions, clients would sometimes request male lawyers instead, and she often found herself the only woman in important meetings. But here's what they didn't understand about Sushila. Every obstacle only made her stronger. Every no fueled her determination to prove that justice has no gender. Her breakthrough came with a landmark case involving a woman who had been cheated out of her property by male relatives. Traditional lawyers had dismissed it as unwinnable, but Sushila saw a legal opportunity others missed. She spent months building an airtight case, and when she won, the entire legal community took notice. Wait until you hear what happened when she started climbing the judicial ladder. The resistance she faced was unlike anything you can imagine.
As Sushila began rising through the judicial ranks, the opposition intensified dramatically. It wasn't just skepticism anymore. It was active resistance. Political figures who had never questioned male appointments suddenly found countless reasons why a woman might not be suitable for higher judicial positions. They questioned her emotional stability, her ability to make tough decisions, and even suggested that family responsibilities would interfere with her duties. But Sushila had developed something her critics hadn't expected: an unshakable conviction in her own abilities. Every case she handled, she approached with meticulous preparation and absolute integrity. Her judgments were fair, thorough, and legally sound. Slowly, some of the legal community began to take notice. The real test came when she was appointed as a district judge, becoming one of the first women to hold such a position in Nepal. The hostility was immediate. Senior judges questioned her every decision, court staff were less cooperative, and there were constant whispers about the lady judge who thought she could do a man's job. The breakthrough moment came when a high-profile corruption case landed on her desk. The entire nation was watching. Political pressures were mounting from all sides, and everyone wondered if she would buckle under the pressure. The defendants were powerful political figures with connections reaching the highest levels of government. Phone calls came at all hours, some offering bribes, others making threats. One night, a black car followed her home and parked outside her house for hours. The message was clear: they were watching her, and they could reach her any time they wanted. For the first time in her career, Sushila seriously considered backing down. The pressure was unlike anything she had experienced before. But when morning came and she saw newspaper headlines about corruption destroying the country, something hardened inside her. What happened next would define not just her career, but the future of women in Nepal's judiciary. She delivered a judgment that was not only legally brilliant, but showed such courage and independence that even her harshest critics had to pause. The case involved powerful political figures, and many expected her to bow to pressure. Instead, she proved that justice was truly blind in her courtroom. Her verdict was comprehensive and fearless. She sentenced the corrupt officials to significant prison terms and ordered the recovery of millions in stolen public funds. The courtroom erupted in applause from citizens who had waited years to see powerful criminals held accountable. Word of her fearless judgment spread throughout the legal community. Suddenly, the woman they had tried to sideline was being discussed in the highest corridors of power. Some were impressed. Others were worried about what this might mean for traditional power structures. Then came the phone call that would change everything. But what she heard on that call would test everything she had worked for her entire career.
The call came on a quiet Tuesday morning in March 2016. On the other end was the voice of the Prime Minister's office, informing her that she was being considered for the position of Chief Justice of Nepal. Chief Justice, the highest position in the country's judicial system, never before held by a woman in Nepal's history. For a moment, even Sushila was stunned into silence. This was beyond what she had dared to dream when she first entered law school decades ago. But along with the excitement came a sobering realization. The real battle was just beginning. The announcement of her nomination sent shockwaves through the political establishment. Emergency meetings were called, backroom deals were discussed, and suddenly everyone had an opinion about whether Nepal was ready for a female Chief Justice. The media coverage was intense, with some celebrating the historic nature of the appointment while others questioning whether she could handle such responsibility. But the most challenging opposition came from within the judicial system itself. Senior judges who had expected to be considered for the position found it difficult to accept that they had been passed over for a woman in Nepal's history. Some were vocal in their criticism, others worked behind the scenes to undermine her nomination. The attacks were both professional and personal. Her judicial decisions were re-examined and criticized. Her personal life was scrutinized, and questions were raised about whether she was too aggressive or too emotional for such responsibility. These were questions no male nominee had ever faced. Sushila found herself caught in a storm of controversy that had nothing to do with her qualifications and everything to do with her gender. Late nights were spent preparing for confirmation hearings, answering the same questions over and over about her capabilities, while male nominees had never faced such intense scrutiny. The loneliness during this period was overwhelming. Despite her outward confidence, Sushila sometimes wondered if the fight was worth it. The pressure was unlike anything she had experienced before. Not just professional pressure, but the weight of representing all women who dared to dream big. 3 weeks before her confirmation hearing, something unexpected happened that changed everything. A group of Nepal's most respected legal scholars published an open letter strongly endorsing her candidacy. The letter systematically dismantled every criticism against her and compared her qualifications favorably to previous chief justices. The real turning point came when a retired Chief Justice, one of the most revered figures in Nepal's legal history, called her the most qualified candidate for Chief Justice in a generation. Then came the confirmation day. As she walked into that room, she carried with her not just her own dreams, but the hopes of countless women who saw in her a possibility they had never imagined for themselves.
The confirmation hearing was unlike any Nepal had seen before. The room was packed with media, legal professionals, and citizens who understood they were witnessing history in the making. Sushila faced hours of rigorous questioning, some fair and some clearly designed to undermine her confidence. But something remarkable happened during those hearings. With each question, her responses became more powerful, more assured. She didn't just defend her qualifications, she demonstrated them brilliantly. Her deep understanding of constitutional law, her vision for judicial reform, and her unwavering commitment to justice shone through every answer. When asked about handling political pressure, she replied with quiet strength, "I have spent my entire career proving that justice must be independent of political influence. As Chief Justice, I will ensure that the Supreme Court remains the final guardian of our Constitution." When questioned about gender and leadership, she responded with dignity, "I do not seek this position because I am a woman. I seek it because I am qualified. But if my appointment inspires even one young girl to believe she can achieve her dreams, then it will have served a purpose beyond justice." When the final vote was cast and her appointment was confirmed, the room fell silent for a moment. Then, slowly, applause began to build. It wasn't just polite acknowledgement, it was recognition that something fundamental had just shifted in Nepal's history. As Chief Justice Sushila Karki took her oath of office, she made a quiet promise to herself and to all the women watching. She would not just be the first female Chief Justice, she would be so effective, so principled, and so dedicated that no one would ever again question whether a woman could hold this position. Her tenure was marked by landmark judgments that strengthened judicial independence, protected constitutional rights, and ensured that justice was truly accessible to all citizens, regardless of their gender, economic status, or political connections. She faced political pressures that would have broken lesser individuals, but she stood firm in her commitment to judicial integrity. Her most famous decision came when she had to rule on a constitutional crisis involving the Prime Minister himself. Political pressure was enormous, but Chief Justice Karki applied the law without fear or favor, delivering a judgment that upheld constitutional principles even when it was politically unpopular. But perhaps her greatest achievement wasn't any single judgment or legal precedent. It was the message she sent to every young girl in Nepal and beyond, that there is no dream too big, no barrier too high, and no position too important for a woman who combines competence with courage. Today, when young women in Nepal think about their future possibilities, they think differently because of Sushila Karki. She didn't just break a glass ceiling, she shattered it so completely that it can never be rebuilt the same way again. The little girl who was once told that law wasn't for women became the woman who redefined what was possible for an entire generation. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful kind of justice of all.